Please welcome Dustin Lance Black.
And you don't stop, and you don't stop, and you don't quit, and you don't quit, and you don't stop, and you don't stop, and you don't. Everybody on the move.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here. I love you too. And I have to, if I'm a little out of it or a little discombobulated or emotional tonight, I swear to you I haven't been drinking the wine at the table yet. A couple hours ago, I got news that my grandfather, who tough military guy and fan of the Philadelphia Flyers, passed away. And I know if he was here, he'd grab me by the shoulders and hit me in the ass and say, "Go give that gay speech, kid." So this one's for you, Grandpa. So family, right? That's why I love Utah. Family. I grew up, probably like a lot of people here, I grew up in this very conservative Mormon family. And I'm not going to blame that for everything. I also grew up in the military and in Texas. Pretty stacked deck. And that meant that a lot of the words I learned growing up early on were words like unholy, unnatural, and unworthy. And then there was this really big word I remember them using in church. They liked it a lot, and it sounded like this. They'd use it on Sundays. They'd say, homosexuality is sin. Next to the crime of murder comes the sin of sexual impurity. Now that was beamed into my church way out in San Antonio, Texas when I was just a little kid, right? And worse than that, it came from the lips of one of my great heroes, the guy who I had been raised since birth to look at as a hero. I wanted to be just like him when I grew up, and his name was President Spencer W. Kimball. And I held on to that word. I was a kid and I was a future writer, and I thought, what a great big word, homosexual. But then like a year later, I'm in my little neighborhood and I see this kid that I knew well walking away with one of my toy cars he'd spray painted to conceal the theft. And we were a broke family, we had no money. So I knew I wasn't gonna get a new car, and I stopped breathing and my heart started racing. And it wasn't because I was angry at him. It wasn't because I wanted to beat him up. It was because I had a huge crush on him. And I wanted to kiss him, and I couldn't believe he did that to me. But that was the same moment that I knew that all of those hateful, horrible words were about me. Now, I don't know how it works here, but in San Antonio, in our ward, on Sundays, all the young people are encouraged to do something very, very important. They're encouraged to get up in front of the congregation and bear their testimony, right? To share what they believe to be righteous and true. But you know what? With all the cajoling from my mother, I was never able to do it. I tried, but I was never able to do it, much to their disappointment, because I think if anyone at the time had said, "Hey, what do you believe? What do you truly believe?" I would have had to say, at that young age, that I was right down there with all the murderers and the sinners and the rapists, all 3'4" of me at 6 years old, because I had been led to believe that God did not love me and that I was going to hell. And as I saw it, I had two choices. One was to hide, to go on a Mormon mission, to get married and have a small Mormon family of, say, 20 or 30 kids. Or I could do what I thought about constantly, which was to take my own life. And that's not an uncommon story. I think we all know that. Even today, LGBT kids are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight brothers and sisters. And in an unaccepting environment, they are 9 times more likely to attempt suicide. And we got a lot of families and a lot of homes like that here in Utah. So, there weren't enough pills, thank goodness, in my mother's Mormon medicine cabinet, so I didn't go that way. I went the other route, and I hid, and I shrunk, and I came to believe, like a lot of young people today, that hope, this word hope, was simply delayed disappointment, and that happiness was this thing for other people. But the good news for me is I have this very stubborn mom. And she thought, you know what, I'm going to get my kid up there to bear his testimony. I'm going to break him of this shyness problem. I know exactly what I'm going to do. We'd moved to California. She said, I'm signing him up for theater classes. right? I don't know that my mom knew what drama club was all about. But it's not the most butch club on campus now, is it? So I liked it. I really liked it a lot. And I got into summer stock theater, and somewhere around the summer of 1988, I had this theater teacher. He was like a camp counselor almost, and he gathered a group of us together, and he changed my life forever. Now, I don't know if somebody in the group had said something homophobic, or he just saw me and some others and thought, these kids need to hear this, but he played a recording of a speech for us. And it was a speech that was delivered a decade earlier on June 9th, 1978. That was just a day before my 4th birthday, and it was the very week my father had moved my whole family out to San Antonio, and the speech went like this. Somewhere in Des Moines or San Antonio, there is a young gay person who all of a sudden realizes that he or she is gay, knows that if the parent finds out, they'll be tossed out of the house. The classmates will taunt the child, and the Anita Bryants and John Briggs are doing their bit on TV, and that child has several options, staying in the closet or suicide. And then one day, that child might open up the paper and it says, homosexual elected in San Francisco, and there are 2 new options. One option is to go to California or to stay in San Antonio, or I say Utah, and fight. Now, I was almost 14 when I heard Harvey. That was Harvey Milk. I was almost 14 when I heard that for the very, very first time. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of a leader who wasn't leading with fear. He was leading with hope. And for the first time in my life, his brand of hope included me. And I often think about him. I think about him a lot whenever I come out here to Salt Lake, which I try to come out here as often as possible. And every time, my friends look at me like, you gonna be okay? Is there something wrong with you? Why are you heading out there? And it reminds me of a Harvey Milk, quote, saying, he always said that this war against homophobia is a war against fear. Fear of the unknown and fear of what is different. And that is where we are right now in Utah in this LGBT fight. The fight here is not about marriage, not yet. The fight is still about the freedom to come out. And I gotta tell you, I talk about Utah all the time outside of this state, and I don't think folks always understand why it's so incredibly important that we pass full and inclusive housing and employment non-discrimination in this state. And I'll tell you why. It is so incredibly important that we have this freedom to come out and live authentically as who we are, as how God made us, without the fear of losing our home and our job. And why is this so incredibly important? Why does this step always have to come first in the gay rights movement? Why has it always been the watershed movement, a moment for LGBT rights? And I'll tell you, it's a thing called visibility. Visibility is the thing that this movement, it's the challenge this movement has struggled with since the beginning, because we are not always immediately identifiable. I might be, and a lot of my friends are, and you guys here have the biggest challenge, I gotta say, because I walk around here and there's all these, cute Mormon guys with their clean-cut haircuts, and they've been taught since an early age to appreciate ballroom dancing and musicals, and I'm like, how does anybody in Salt Lake know who's gay or not? I have no idea. But all kidding aside, it's so incredibly important, especially here, that we make ourselves known in this fight for LGBT rights. Because the most powerful thing we have as a people is our own story, right? And we gotta feel free to share it without repercussion, so that everybody in Utah finds out that they know and love or work with a gay or lesbian person, that we aren't all those things that they have been taught about us.